I was asked 2 weeks ago to talk about the challenges of a multi-GNSS future for the IGS. I was told that I have a 25-minute slot, which would be decimated to a 15-minute slot because everybody would overrun his talk before me, so I'll try to speed up. There were a couple of keywords in that title, challenges, IGS, multi-GNSS. So I thought, let's start with the IGS. What is the IGS? Let's have a look at the mission statement. It was already said before, the IGS sees itself as the premier service provider for data and products for geodesy, for reference frame Earth observation, and navigation and timing. Now, that makes it imminent what the challenge is. We have to keep that promise in a world of changing GNSS. It's not just multi-GNSS, we are facing lots of changes. And I've tried to highlight a few of these changes here. We have real-time, one of the challenges which we are probably already mastering. There is the challenge of assured position navigation and timing, a debate that happens pretty much outside the IGS, but the reliance on GNSS is getting much bigger in these days. It is not just something for the scientific community. Bank services depend on precision timing. Electric traffic networks depend on that. So assured PNT is one of the big challenges that the community is facing. We also have commercial providers that in some way interact with a purely scientific service that the IGS has mainly been. And then, of course, there is the new signals and constellation, which I was asked to talk about. Now, I would like to compare that a bit with a black and white picture of the Earth that the work on GPS and GLONASS has given us for the past 25 years. GPS and GLONASS are excellent tools. We have put all our effort into utilizing them to get a kind of crystal clear, very sharp image of the Earth. But when we look into multi-GNSS, I think it doesn't hurt to add a bit of color to that. We have a bit of Chinese red, a bit of European blue, and all that gives us a new picture of our Earth. It is still the same Earth. It's still lots of the same information, but we get complementary information, spectral information. That's what I hope that we can get from multi-GNSS. Now, let's look a bit back. Multi-GNSS, it was already said that it started about 10 years ago when the IGS changed its names from a GPS service into a GNSS service. Actually, that was roughly the time that the first new constellation satellites were launched, that the first new signals were transmitted. And I looked it up, it was actually September 2005 when the first Block 2 RM satellite was launched with an L2C capability. A few months later, we had Jove-A, the first experimental test satellite of the new Galileo system. And another 2 years later, we had the first Compass satellite, as it was called at that time, the first satellite for the Chinese navigation satellite system. A few years later, there were kind of private initiatives of some analysis centers or protagonists of the IGS to set up a small global network to track some of these signals. The big IGS network was strongly focused on GPS and GLONASS at that time. But again, a few years later, in 2011, the IGS raised the call for participation for what was called the multi-GNSS experiment. And this experiment became active, very active, I would say, in the beginning of 2012. It was established as a platform for early familiarization with the new constellations and served as a platform to provide data and products. And that's pretty much where we are today. Let's have a look at the GNSS status. This is a sheet that I've been presenting over and over in meetings, but it has to be kept online, and it's very hard to keep it up to date because we have an inflationary number of changes from one meeting to the next. I prepared that 2 weeks ago, and I had to cancel out the first line when I learned that the last Block 2A satellite was disabled a week ago, so it's probably time to say farewell to these old friends. But we got a couple of new friends, and we will have the 12th Block 2F satellite in a couple of weeks. GLONASS, we have now 1K1 satellite active. BeiDou has seen the third generation satellite launches. 4 of them have been launched. I think another one is pending in a couple of weeks again. We just had an IRNS launch 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, the 5th one, and the other ones are going to follow by the end of this month and by the end of next month. So it's rapidly changing. New satellites and new constellations are popping in and filling our world of multi-GNSS. What has the IGS done in that context? The IGS has been very active, and I have to thank all those station providers that really made big effort to upgrade their equipment, and we ended up with a network of about 130 stations now, and it's certainly not the end, that will continue, but right now before the meeting it ended up with 130 stations that have either Galileo or BeiDou or QZSS capability in addition to GPS and GLONASS. About more than half of them are actually real-time stations as well. So the IGS has responded to the multi-GNSS challenge, and we have a solid platform now for generating products for these constellations. We have a total of 6 analysis centers that routinely provide multi-GNSS products, where multi-GNSS means at least one new constellation, BeiDou, Galileo, or QZSS. 3 of those centers even make full-featured 5-constellation products, and that will really be a very good platform for doing multi-GNSS combinations. Now is the time that we can actually start to do that. If we look at the performance of these products, we can make inter-comparisons. That does not look as bright as we might want it to be. We have about a 1 decimeter accuracy or precision for the Galileo products, slightly worse for BeiDou as a whole, but still as good as Galileo probably for the BeiDou MEO satellites. And also QZSS, the consistency of the product is still quite a bit different from what we are used to from GPS and GLONASS. So there is lots of things to do, but let's talk about the challenges that we are facing, and I just try to chart the landscape with a few big blocks. I called one of these blocks habits that have to change. There are technical challenges, there are performance challenges, and there are political. I think this is not a unique association here. You can sort things differently, but I just took these phrases. Let me zoom into some of them, and I start with habits. We are all used to certain data formats. It took us a long way to implement formats into our software, and all of a sudden comes multi-GNSS. Everything is changing, and it continues to change. We will have heavy debates about the bias formats. We had long debates about the RINEX formats, about RTCM. So these things are in a continuous evolution. They have to be adapted to the needs of the new signals and the new systems. We have conventions that we are used to. You all have this your steering attitude in your minds, and it worked very well for GPS. It worked nicely for GLONASS with a few exceptions, but now come all the other constellations. Have you heard about IRNS that points the satellites to India, not to the center of the Earth? All that has to be taken into account, and we have to rethink our old traditions. There is also terminology. It sounds stupid, but people got used to certain terms, and still after 10 years of multi-GNSS, I hear people talk about an L3 combination. What the hell is that? We have an L3 frequency band. We have GLONASS transmitting in that, and actually GPS has utilized L3. Please get these names out of your mind and think multi-GNSS. Political, you could also say management issues. One of my favorites is really the lack of information. There is probably only one system, and Satoshi is here, who did a good job to communicate information to the community that we need. The simple question, where the hell is the antenna? Has been nicely answered by JAXA. We are still waiting for that information for some of the other constellations. Spacecraft data, we want to develop radiation pressure models, but we cannot do so reliably if we don't get the information from the numbers. So that is one of the big challenges, and it's a continuous fight since 10 years, and I'm dare to say it will continue for the next 10 years. We have new players in the field. It can be other international partners, but it can also be commercial providers. We have strong national initiatives. China is very enthusiastic about their own system. They build up monitoring services for all constellations. All that is something that the IGS has to face as a multi-GNSS service. Funding, needless to say, we are daily fighting for funds. And there are new duties. I mentioned monitoring just a second ago. How does the IGS respond to that? And then, of course, comes performance. This is a chart that was generated a week ago by our new analysis center. Thank you for providing that. We all know that chart. It is the tradition of the IGS. The IGS started 25 years ago with the first products at the 20 centimeter consistency level. And we are now at the sub 2 centimeter consistency level. I don't want to say accuracy, but at least precision of the products, the self-consistency. Now, where are we with multi-GNSS? We are here, and honestly, I do hope that we don't take another 25 years to get here with multi-GNSS. So now, these are the challenges. Technical challenges, again, understanding we have to really invest into the thorough work, algorithms, characterization, tools, concepts to solidly work with multi-GNSS. It will be heavy work. Ruth, forgive me. I would say with a bit of leadership and a bit of help from our friends, we can manage that job.